Hi everyone. I wanted to go over just a few things about how to take a drawing. For example, I've got a drawing here of a pizza cutter that I designed. This is an older design, and it's just a sketch on a piece of paper. So this would be similar to how you might take your logo, or like I've been working on a logo there, so I've got some rough sketches of that. And that's kind of the neat thing. You can take a rough sketch and just work with it in Rhino and kind of clean things up and make it a little bit more accurate. And so I wanted to take some time in this video and basically go over how you might work with your 4x4 drawings. You've created your 4x4 sketches, 4" by 4" sketches on paper. You've maybe worked on your personal logo in sketch form in your sketchbook. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you can go from your sketchbook to Rhino. I think that it's problematic sometimes to work solely in Rhino and open up in Rhino and just be staring at this blank screen. It can be overwhelming. And honestly, I think what happens is that Rhino, or what you know how to do in Rhino, starts to dictate your design. And that's a problem. If you are letting the program dictate what you're creating, I think you need to make some adjustments to your workflow. So in this case, I think it's a good practice to be able to work in the sketchbook and then bring that sketchbook drawing into Rhino. So we're going to talk about how to do that. Now, what I did in the case of this pizza cutter, I want the dimensions of this object to stay the same in Rhino. And this may be the case with your 4x4 design. If you made the design 4x4 inches, 4" by 4" on the paper, I want to show you how to make that translation from the sketchbook at the actual dimensions to actual dimensions in Rhino, so that when we output it to the vinyl cutter or the laser cutter, that everything stays intact and that there's a direct correlation between those. So what I did, I took a ruler. In the case of this pizza cutter, I took a ruler and I set my drawing down on a flat surface. I laid my ruler in the image, somewhere in the image, again flat. Doesn't matter if it's even straight or not, as long as it's flat. And then I took my phone, and I keep my phone parallel to the work surface where I'm photographing, and I take a photograph of it. And then I email that to myself or AirDrop it or whatever, and then I have this image that has a ruler in it, and so I can kind of start to take some measurements of it. So I want to show how to work with Rhino using a reference image. This is a very useful tool. I use this quite often when I begin designing in Rhino, and so I just want to share that with you. So I'm going to switch over to a screenshot here, and then we'll show you what we can do. So, all right, here we are in Rhino. We're going to talk about bringing that sketchbook drawing in and using that as a tool to be able to draw over the top. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and get the good habit of saving my file. And so in this case, we'll say this is a Sketchbook to Rhino file. And we'll save this to the desktop. All right, now you'll see I started in millimeters. I did this intentionally. Later on, when we output our designs for our negative positive design and also for our personal logo, we'll be exporting those as inches. So I'm going to work in inches. The ruler that I used in my drawing that I took a photograph of was in inches, and so we're just going to go ahead and change over. So I want to show you how to do that again in case you've forgotten. That's under settings, and I can go to units, and I can say inches, and it'll say, do you want to scale your model? I'm going to say yes, even though I don't have anything actually modeled in the Rhino space. You'll see now that I'm in inches. If I want to adjust my grid, I can adjust the grid to more points to make it larger. Hit tab and then close that. You'll now see that down here in the corner of the window we are in inches, so we can tell where we're at. So the first step that we're going to do, that we're going to take toward drawing in Rhino from our sketchbook, you'll see I have gone ahead and I have the photograph. I'll just open this in preview. So I have the photograph of my pizza cutter with the ruler in place. So this we're just going to bring into Rhino using a command called picture. This used to be called picture frame. Now it's just called picture. And we select that, and this will bring up a pop-up menu asking us for the photograph, the JPEG image that we want to import into Rhino. So I'll open this up, and you'll see that nothing happens other than our command bar says first corner of picture. So I'm just going to click, and then I can drag, and I can make this whatever size I want. Now, obviously right now we're just going to pick a random size. We're just going to click anywhere, and that now establishes that image within Rhino. Now, I'm working in the default layer, and if I were to select this, it is a selectable object. What Rhino does is it takes and imports the picture, the photograph, as a surface. You can see there's no thickness to that surface. You can actually see through the flip side of it, right? So this is a surface with an image projected onto it, okay? One of the first things that I normally do once we begin drawing is I isolate that surface. So a lot of times I'll rename, if you just click twice on this slowly, and I can say, you know, this is my surface picture. All right, and I hit enter. So that'll remind me that that's the layer, and then I can isolate and lock that layer so it's not editable. Or no, but right now I want to be able to edit this drawing, and you'll notice I am in the top view where I brought it into the Rhino space. And so the way that you scale an object based upon an actual dimension in real life and then translate that to Rhino, this is how you do it. You go to transform, and you notice I've got the object selected. You could have it deselected, but it'll ask for that as the first command if I have it deselected. I'll go to transform, and I will say scale, and in this case I'm going to scale 2D because this is a plane. It only has 2 dimensions. It has no thickness. So I've got basically an X and a Y dimension. So I'm going to scale it in 2D, and what I do is I zoom in, and I try to zoom in really far and really close, and I zoom in on that ruler, and I click there at the very beginning, and then I click, and if I can do 11, I could do it. I could probably do that, but I'll just do 10, and I click right here. Now, if I zoom out, I want to show you what happens. At any point, I can adjust the scale of that from that first point I've been given. Now, we know what that dimension is. It's 10 inches. So if I just type in 10 and enter, it will automatically scale that image. Now you can see it got quite small, right? This is the correct dimension though, and I can double check and verify this by going to my Dimensions tab and saying Linear Dimension. And I can measure. I can go back, and I can even measure. I don't have to measure full 10 inches. I can even just measure from here to here. And I click from my 1 to 2, and that should equal about an inch, and it is. It's 1.03. So this is really accurate. And again, who knows how close I located those images, or those 2 points that I isolated there. But the longer the ruler, typically, right, the longer that dimension, you wouldn't want to scale it based on 1 inch. You know, when we first scaled it, we'd probably want to scale it on as large of a surface as we can, and we'll have greater accuracy that way. So now This is going, when I draw this, this is going to equal exactly the dimensions it was in my sketchbook. This is a useful skill. Let's say we were working on installing an installation within a physical gallery space. I could go and take photographs and take dimensions and actually use this to model off of, knowing that I have a given dimension. A lot of times I've even wanted to build a tool or something that I saw for sale, and if somebody has a nice photograph from a side view or a top view, I can actually make a replica or a duplicate of that tool or part just from photographs, and taking given measurements that I know. So this basic skill cannot be underestimated in terms of its use and its practicality, and how you might be able to apply it later on. So now I'm going to switch to a different layer. It's going to be easier to draw in a different color over the top of this if I switch to a different color. Side note on that, if you ever want to change the color of your layer, you click on the little color layer and it brings up a color wheel, and then you can edit and pull things, different colors onto what you want. So now that layer is now, magenta or whatever. So I'm going to go back to red. The red stands out really nice, usually on a photograph that I'm drawing over the top of. And I am going to lock. So right now I can select this, but if I lock that layer, I can no longer select that. I don't have to worry about bumping it. I don't have to worry about accidentally clicking on it. So this is probably one of your most used tools that you will end up using. Now, one thing I could do, now you'll notice my photograph's a little crooked. I'm going to unlock that just briefly. I'm going to show you how I can take and straighten it. So if I go to transform and I go to rotate, I could click on, let's say, I've got a ground line I've kind of drawn in here. I could click on this at that line, and I could click on the other end of my line, and you'll notice I can rotate this slightly. Now, the neat thing I can do is if I hold down Shift, it locks that line, flat to my construction plane in Rhino. So I'm able to basically just hold down Shift and click, and now I've just straightened that drawing up so that it's flat, and now I can lock it. So again, another quick little tip to allow you to flatten that image. All right, so now let's go ahead. Let's just start drawing. I'm just gonna, again, you're gonna be using this in the context of maybe your 4x4 negative positive drawings, or maybe in the context of your logo, which I'm gonna come back and do my logo as well for you on video. But I thought laying out how I approach this, using this as a design tool. Right now these lines are kind of sketchy. They're not like all that accurate. And what drawing over this will allow me to do is to actually make really good templates for transferring to metal, or if I want to, and I actually just want to cut it out by hand. Let's say you're in the wood shop and you wanted to lay out a nice accurate template for cutting something out of a sheet of wood by hand. This is a great tool, because at the end of this week I'm going to show you how to make printouts just on your inkjet printer or your laser printer from Rhino, and it's just a super versatile tool. That's how I used Rhino. This is pre 3D printing, pre laser cutting, in terms of being at the level of an artist using those tools. Not too many artists were using those tools at the time I learned Rhino. So I was mainly using Rhino as a kind of a tool to be able to print out templates with. So, okay, let's begin. So I want to point out a few different very useful tools. Obviously, we can be drawing with two-dimensional curves that are, circles and things like that. I'm going to show you a few different things. So let's say I wanted a circle. I could choose a 3-point circle instead, so I could give it like a point and a point and a point, and then, bingo, there's that curve, right? I could try that same command again. I don't know if that'll give us what we want, but I could say, that I chose the wrong one there, so let me just go back and we'll see, because the default is the center. So I'm going to do 3-point again. We'll click, here, and we'll click there, and we'll click, there, and that actually gave me that kind of that arc we wanted. We could do the same thing again. I could hit enter to repeat the command. We'll do 3-point here. We'll click here, here, and here. So similar in that, you know, we're just using that tool to be able to get kind of these basic shapes that we want. You know, here's a case where I could come back and, you know, give myself a circle. I'll turn on center to make sure I'm centering everything off this wheel, because I want everything to kind of be equal. So then I can say, okay, well, there's a circle. So anything that's really easy, I'm just trying to kind of get out of the way with like basic geometry that Rhino has, you know, built in, like circles and straight lines and stuff like that. In a second here, we'll get to areas where we might have, you know, more organic forms, or, you know, curvilinear forms that aren't translated into kind of this exact geometry that we're using right now. So we'll show you that in just a second. Let me just get kind of the bulk of this. Right, and then, you know, we'll do one more there. I just keep hitting enter since I'm just using circles after circle. You know, it makes it really quick. You know, sometimes I'll put in a ground line, you know, that represents that line I drew, which is here. I'm going to show you a little trick with this. So if I want to hold this line straight, I just hold down shift, and you'll notice it locks it. Shifting for the second point will either, if I'm closer to the vertical, it'll lock it vertical. If I'm closer to the horizontal, it'll lock it horizontal. And then I can click there. All right, so now we wind up with what we want there. And then let's do a few more circles here, because we've got some pivot points we want to put in. So maybe there's a pivot there. Let's do the same thing here. I'm gonna try to use the same diameter pivot on these. So I'm just gonna, you know, click the center and then hit enter, and then it locks the same dimensions for all three of those circles. That looks pretty good. I think these I'm gonna save for some other drawing tools. So another tool that's very useful in terms of 2D drawing is this icon right here, which says control point curve. I want to kind of just demo this. So if I've got an existing drawing, I can come in and start drawing. We'll just show you in here in the middle of this. I can draw with this, and you do have to be careful with this. Rhino basically builds curves from points, so it's a series of points, and you'll notice how it kind of like smooths the line as I'm placing that. There can be such a thing that you are zoomed in too far and you're doing this. Like, that's crazy. You're going to put in so many points that it's going to get a little bit overwhelming. Even for like a vinyl cutter, you can get too much information, too many points sometimes. You know, and it winds up making it to where you have difficulty cutting it. If I don't like a point in the middle, I'm in the middle of the command, right? The command is still open. I can hit U and enter, U, enter, U, enter, and I can undo points, right? And so, again, this is a really useful tool if you want to try to mimic a hand-drawn line. This control point curve is one of those tools that lets you do that. And I'm going to turn on near in this case. I know I told you to leave near turned off, but I'm going to turn that on, and I can actually bring this right down to it. And then when I'm done, I'll just hit enter, and that'll end that. Real quick, I'm going to show you a few other things. Let's say you had an area that was sharp. I'm going to do this up here. And you were drawing with a control point curve, and you needed to like create a sharp point. If I go like this and try to create a 90 degree, I can't do it, right? It starts to basically smooth that arc. So instead, if I would place a point and place like 3 points close together, then I can get a pointier line like that, okay? Otherwise, it's going to do, you know, like this. And I get ready to make that, and it's you know, and that's kind of the point of that control point curve, is it's to smooth, right? It's funny, I probably want a little bit more precise flow to this instead of the hand drawn, because I think the hand drawn was a little sketchy or a little rough. So another command that I really depend highly on is arc start in direction. And what this command does is you give it a starting point, and I think we talked about this in our last tutorial, but I'll give it a starting and an ending point, and then I can pull outward. Now you can see I've got a lot of O snaps turned on, so it's snapping a lot. So I'm going to turn these off as I'm trying to generate that curve, and I want to flow right off of that circle that I have at the bottom. And so that gives me, and so you can see I modified it slightly, but I want that. I want to kind of freshen up or make my design a little bit more accurate, right? I've left in turned on. It's very important that I leave that turned on so I can grab that last endpoint. You can even use this start in command in a very small way within larger arcs. So let's just see what this looks like. That looks pretty good, right? And I'm just keep hitting enter to repeat that last command. And it looks like my arc would probably end right about there. We'll come in and do this. And then we'll put another one in, making sure to snap to end. And then this is a case where we'd want near turned on. So we'd turn on near. And then maybe we do something like that. I don't like that. I'm going to make that out of 2 curves. I'm going to do one more. Let's do one here. And do 2 kind of smaller. That looks pretty good. And then we want to bring these kind of together and we do something like that. And that's not real smooth, but I'm going to show you a little technique that you can use to work with that. All right, so that technique, let's say you don't like that transition, that little bump that's right there. I can turn on control points. So under Edit, there's an option that says Control Points. If you're on a Mac or on a PC, you can actually use F10 and F11. So I'll turn control points on. It'll ask, what do you want to turn control points on? So I'll say this and this and hit enter. And what this will do is it'll give me actual control points. Some of you might be familiar with these as anchors, right, in Illustrator, but I can nudge those over. Now, in this case, I only grabbed one, so I'm going to hit Control Z, and I'm going to select both of those, and then I can use Gumball to kind of nudge that over to smooth that transition. So this is a great way to edit individual curves by turning those control points on, and then when you're done, you basically say control points off, and we select the points that we want to hide, and we hit enter, and now they're gone. So so that just smoothed that transition. There are a lot of details within control points where you can add. Let's just show you real quick. We'll go to control points. You can add a knot or a kink. That'll actually kind of lock a line down at a certain point. You can start to edit those points so that when you are pulling on them, that knot will stay, right? And so it's not as like editable. So those are unique tools that you may want to use. You may want to insert a control point into a line to give you more degrees of flexibility within that line. You might want to remove a control point. This is a real strength of Rhino in being able to like edit these individual points on a line. So make sure you're aware of that command for the future. So I think you'll use it quite a bit. Let's go back. We'll do arc, start in direction. I'm going to choose this. And we'll go ahead and draw this, and I'll make sure end is snapped again. That's very important, especially for vinyl cutting. We want to make sure that we're making things that are going to meet end to end and be clean. You see I got a little bump there. I might need to come in and edit that with a control point line. I'm going to just come on. I've got near turned on, so we'll snap here and see if we can get kind of a cool shape that we like, that we're happy with here. That's pretty close, right? And let's do the same thing down here. Maybe do something like that. And we'll grab here and here. And got a few more details to put in. Let's grab up here and down there. Be careful with that near though. You may want to turn that off when you're not using it, okay? All right, I think I'll come back and I'll draw. Well, let's go ahead. I guess we'll draw this now. Let's do maybe a circle, and we'll use center point on this. So I recommend that you, you spend some time with some of your drawings. And especially that negative positive, turn on near this time, especially that negative positive project that we're working on, and spend some time bringing those in and tracing, and see what you can come up with. Now, let's go back over to the control point curve here and use that for this. So let's come in, and I'm going to turn off near. because this is kind of a peculiar shape. I probably could have done this out of arcs, but this is a good excuse to kind of use it. Again, you don't want to be zoomed in too far. You'll put in way too many control points. So you have to be cautious with this. A lot of my students become really reliant on this control point curve. And I don't think it's a bad thing as long as you are not zoomed in. I've seen students where they're coming in, they're actually putting like point, point, point. They're barely moving. And they're trying to follow that line so exact. And I think it's actually better to use it a little bit more zoomed out. All right, so there we go. So now I just want to show you, if we turn off, but using the light bulb, turn off our background layer, this is what we've got. So we can come in, we can delete that. And we could start to do some editing just by doing my big sweep, right? My big sweep of selection and doing a trim function, right? Everything will be hot in this method. So we're going to have to do a lot of, editing here, just figuring out what we're getting rid of. And I can even say, well, I want to get rid of that and just use that. Maybe I want to get rid of that, And let's see, we got to maybe turn on our thing temporarily while we're in the middle of command. We can do that. And we know we want to get rid of this. And we're probably going to get rid of this and this. We need to zoom in and get rid of that little detail. And then we want to keep the wheel. We know we want to get rid of this and probably that and that. And we want to get rid of that. We'll keep that for the wheel detail, right? And let's see, we need a straight line there to straighten that out. That's too pointy. Let's hit enter to end that, and then let's come back in. We'll put a straight line in. This time we'll have to have near turned on. And we'll do something like this and this. And now I'll just need to select that area, and then we'll trim that out. All right, so we got rid of that. And now you'll see we've got some separate lines, right? So this is where we start bringing things together to make sure they're closed regions. So I can hit join, and I can click, there, 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 there. Click there, there, there. Looking good. It's our individual. And now that's one complete region. When I select it, it automatically shut off my command. This is the case where I might want to come back in and put another straight in. So let's do that real quick. We can do that after it's already joined. We'll come in and just do this. Then I come back, select the whole thing, and then I hit trim. Now what that'll do is it'll blow apart my form. I want to show you, if I click on this, see it's separated. So I got to come back in and join that last little bit. So now I have that. And then this is a case where we probably need to make another circle here and kind of join that in. We'll probably do that later on. Let's go ahead and join this together, all the components of this. Now I want to show you, now this is great. This is great. This happens. So this joint says the distance between the closest ends is, this distance. Do you want to join? We want to say no here. That means they are not meeting end to end. So I need to zoom in and, oh, look at that. There's this little overlap. Okay. So we're going to hit, we're just going to hit enter to end that. And then what I can do is I can come in and I can zoom in. This is where Rhino can get you in big trouble. So I want to think about which section I want to trim out. But if I would join that, I'd have an overlap or a gap. It would not ever create a closed region. When I vinyl cut that, what'll happen, it would get to that end of the line and it would draw a line or slice across when going to the next line, leaving a cut line that we don't want. And so it'll be very obvious who the good modelers are when we start vinyl cutting, because we'll be able to tell from how it cuts out, if it's got closed regions or not. So I'm going to trim this. I'm going to get rid of the outer section and then hit enter. And then now I can come back and I can hit join, and we'll click here and here and here. Now, if you get in the habit of doing a join where you're just doing a kind of a big selection, that's kind of a bad habit to get into, because it will automatically let you join it. Now, I am a little concerned here because it didn't auto close the command. And the reason it didn't, when I went to go around there, is because it let me join some things together that it shouldn't have, right? So I'm going to actually hit escape. We're going to go back. We're going to take a look at this. So right there, if I hit join and join here, let's see what it says. Let's see. Yeah, see, it gives me a warning, and so we're gonna say no to that. So you need to get pay very close attention to those little details of how things are intersecting, especially when you're using that near command. See, I'm snapping in areas I have to kind of watch out for. So now we'll hit join, and when I click this and this and this and this and this and this, let's see what happens if it auto closes my command for me when I click on this line. It does. So that tells me this is a closed region. It has no overlaps or anything like that. All right, so we have that shape. I'm going to show you another little tool that's kind of useful. So right now we've got this relationship between this circle. We can't join this, right, because it doesn't touch it. We can't join this, but there's a relationship between these two. So I think of this as, this is, this is Garrett, and this is Rachel, right? And they're friends. There's a relationship between them, but they're not like joined together, right? So we want to just go ahead and group, and that's this grouping command. Let me go back and show you that. It looks like 3 spheres grouped together. This is ungroup, and so I can group objects together. I'm going to show you the effects of this. So let's say I wanted to move this. I've moved it, and I've moved it independently. That relationship has now been destroyed. We've now broken that relationship. So, so if I want to keep this relationship at all times, I can take these separate features, right? These separate people, and group them together. And now when I go to select it, you'll notice it selects everything. So this is different than join. I want you to know the differences between join and group. And so now if I go to move this, it's going to move together. That relationship is locked in together. There's a relationship between this group of friends, right? And so that's how I think about it. And then if I want to ever, break that relationship apart and be able to individually select these, I have to hit ungroup. Now you can actually group things multiple times. So I could have this group that is then attached to this group. So we could go ahead and group these. And I can hit group on those, and now when I select that, there's a relationship now. Now I still have the original group as well. So when I go, let's say I wanted to move, select this independently, I would have to actually click on this and hit ungroup twice. I need to hit it again, but I want to show you what happens. So there's that, but I still have to hit ungroup again. So you're actually, you can get to where you have grouped things so many times that you have to ungroup it. So you may see me sometimes if I'm trying to solve someone's problem, with a file or something, I'll actually come in and I'll just if it's got a bunch of stuff grouped together, let's just show you here. If I have this group, I might actually come in, and when I select it, I might actually just hit ungroup, 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 just to make sure I'm all the way down to the base layer of ungrouping. Okay, so just know that difference between join and I think I've shown you this, but maybe not, but explode, right? Explode will, let's say I wanted to get these back into their separate pieces. I could hit explode, and now they're individual segments that were the original ones. So explode and join go together, and then group and ungroup go together. They are 2 very different things in Rhino. Make sure because I've had students actually turn in assignments for vinyl cutting, and they've actually turned in things that were just grouped rather than join end to end. Group, you can group anything, but it doesn't mean it's going to cut properly, even if it all lights up together. So make sure you know the difference between those two things. So hopefully this video kind of gives you a good overview of how to use the picture frame command to go from Sketchbook to Rhino. Just for fun, let's just very quickly, I'll show you. I'm going to zoom in on all my extents by right-clicking on this magnifying glass, and we can see where we're at in space. Now, if you wanted to, we'd have a little fun with this, right? We could turn off this. Since these are all joined and it's a closed region, I could actually include these spheres, these circles, not spheres, these circles, and I could say solid, extrude planar curve, straight, and I could say both sides, and it will give me a thickness. This is a handle, right, for a pizza cutter, so I want a little thickness to that, and I have that. And then I could do the same relationship here. I could lock this together, and we could say solid, extrude, planar curve, straight, and we'll also make it we'll make it a little thinner, right? And we'll do something like that. And now I have these two things, these two objects that overlap. Let's just for fun, we'll make a real quick pizza cutter blade here. We won't do the full wheel. Let's just do that, and let's get rid of that one. And we'll say solid, extrude, planar curve, straight, and we'll make this real thin. You can see I'm extruding this in the right view, or the front view will make it real thin. And now I have my components. Now they're all overlapping, kind of taking up the same space, so I might actually want to grab a hold of those extrusions now. These are simple extrusions like we talked about, and I might want to say, okay, well that's going to go right there, and then maybe I want to grab this, and whoops, I grabbed the wrong one, didn't I? I grabbed the original curve and not the solid, so let's bring that over here, and maybe I want this over here coming off the side of this, right? So there's this relationship, and then now we have this pizza cutter that's like connected. Now I'll show you later on how to do what's called differencing, where I could have difference and notch this out for this component, but this gives you a good idea. And then a lot of times I'll take that basic shape. Let's just go ahead and take these extrusions and I'll flip them in a different view like this, so you get this kind of it's easier to kind of rotate around, and I can draw a magnifying box around it, and that will let me pivot around the center of that. So now I can see what my three-dimensional object looks like right from that basic sketch. We can just go bam, 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 draw it, extrude it, and now we have a basic form. Now again, this is not modeled by any means. We haven't gotten into like smoothing edges, and this is just a basic extrusion, but I wanted to show you how quickly you can go from a 2D drawing. That's why these 2D drawings are so important. If we've got good clean 2D lines that are closed regions, it will allow us to start extruding things. If you try to extrude something that has not a closed region, it will just do borders. It will not extrude and cap off the full edges, and it's just not clean. And you can see every single one of those points creates what's called an isocurve. An isocurve, I'll show you how we can turn this off, but we can turn off those isocurves so they don't show up on that object. And it's definitely it just shows you where every single one of those points was located when we were end, or point along that control point curve. That's why you can see where your model could get a ton of isocurves and kind of choppy looking if you put in too many points. So just be aware of that, so you wind up with some clean objects in the future. One last thing I'll talk about with this command that I've introduced to you. Let's just switch this to different layers so that we don't have this as a distraction. So I'm going to show you, we can go to object properties. I'm going to switch this to layer 3. Now it's blue. We'll just turn that off, and we can do that way. Or in the future, if you ever want to hide something, Rhino has this cool command where you just type in and say hide, and it will hide whatever's been selected. And if you want to show it, you just type in show, and then you can show it. So either one of those works. I like to just put things in layers. It's easier in some ways to be able to turn on and off. Now let's go back and talk a little bit about this photograph. So if I unlock this photograph, I want to show you sometimes that photograph can be you might want to like alter it in some way where it's not quite so like the opacity of it is adjusted in some way, and you can get to where you're editing those things. Mine's got options under object properties for the rendering of it, and you can see it casts a shadow, so we can turn that off, or it receives shadows, we can turn that off. So some of those things are kind of neat that you can start playing with. There's a density option. Let's just play with this, and we'll say like 0.2, and you can see it just alters that a little bit. So we'll leave that. But in the future, I just wanted to add that you will have to let's say we're going to save this file. So let's go ahead and hit save. So it's an Apple S or Command S. If we are saving this file, this photograph does not save within the file. Okay, so I just want to make a point of this. So if I were to move this, let's just make a new folder, and I drop this photograph inside of here. That was that original photograph. If I close this down, this file that I've got saved to my desktop, let's just close it, and then I go to reopen that file, that image is going to be missing a lot of times. It won't know where to find it. So in this case, I got lucky, and it actually shows it has like knows where it's located. But let's say we deleted that file. So let's just go back and we'll try that. Let's see what that does. So we delete this file. Let's see what happens. You'll notice it's blank, it's missing. It doesn't know where to grab that file from, okay? So when I am using this picture frame command, a lot of times what I'll do is or this picture command, I'll make sure and make a folder for that particular Rhino file, and I will save the image as well. So you know, I'll come in and actually say, okay, we'll just put that inside of that folder, and let's put that inside of that folder. And because they're in the same location, it should reinstate or find that photo again to reference, and it does. See that? So just make sure you know that you need to lock those together in a folder somewhere where you know they're going to both be if you're trying to re-reference that photograph after you've saved and closed. So just a little caveat about that command. All right. So hopefully that was useful. I think this should be good for your 4x4 designs and your logo. I will make another personal logo file because I want to show you some little tips and tricks that you may want to use when you're creating that design. But for this, I think this will be enough to kind of get you started on homework for tomorrow. I will make another video about homework as well, but keep an eye out for that. So hopefully this helped you out. Enjoy.